Why is Trump blockading Venezuela? What is the rationale?
I think you can look at this as a play for regime change. I think, he's been putting pressure on this regime, and one way to tighten that pressure even more would obviously be taking one of their biggest revenue areas, and that's oil. Putting curbs on their oil exports. Already, he's been tightening that through the seizure of a ship earlier this month, as well as just restrictions in general, have helped to curb the amount of money flowing into Venezuela and in particular U.S. dollars. But by doing this, you're really siphoning off a very large portion of the revenues from that the regime can get. Now, there are a few reasons for this. One, Trump has for a long time blamed Venezuela for a flood of drugs coming to the country. You've seen the U.S. administration hit several, over a dozen ships that were suspected of carrying drugs and being involved with the cartels. He's also blamed Venezuela for a surge in illegal immigrants coming into the country, which is something that he struck quite hard during the campaign trail. So, of course, this is sort of a ratcheting up of this pressure, and it's in the onset that we're in a bit of a market glut. The U.S. is producing a lot of oil. Prices are pretty weak. So with all that together, Trump and the administration thought that this was their time to strike.
Yeah, and we can see that, can't we, when we check the oil market. So, yes, we're seeing a move of almost 1.5% up on oil prices, but Brent is still below $60 a barrel. So, Stephen, what does it mean? How central does Venezuela play? What kind of the centrality of that nation in terms of its oil exports onto the market and how this could affect pricing going forward?
I think this is more sentiment-driven, any increase that we see today, than really actual changes in the fundamentals for the oil market. Because, listen, Venezuela last month was producing or exporting roughly 500 to 600,000 barrels a day. Now, to put that into perspective, the global oil market consumes about 100 million barrels a day, so that's less than 1%. So if you remove even all of that, and that's not what Trump is suggesting. He's suggesting just the shadow fleet ships, these dark sanctioned ships, which make up a portion, but not all, of the export from Venezuela, you're not going to be really changing the fundamentals very much, but it does show some sort of discombobulation in the market. There is obviously there's going to be some degree of scramble. A lot of that oil was going to China. Where do they find the replacements? Are there the grades that they can find elsewhere to feed their industries? That's going to be something in focus. But when you do zoom out, a 1% gain is nothing compared to where we're sitting in the oil market. We had prices fall just recently this week to the lowest level since 2021. Oil prices are weak. There is a glut that is expected to get worse in 2026. So even if you were removing these Venezuelan barrels from the market for a prolonged period of time, you're not going to be seeing a sustained increase. In fact, there's probably more downside for the oil market.